indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, folks. You know, Dave was talking about being here for 10 years, and I had to actually go back and take a look at I had to go back and take a look at a couple of documents, and it's like, good grief, has it really been 10 years, Dave? And I guess so, because I'm coming up on my 10 years as section emergency coordinator. I just realized that. That is incredibly frightening.
Yes, it is.
So
for both of us.
Like I told you when you kept begging me for anything that you could do to help the group out in San Diego, and I did my usual trial and test and posture, as opposed to Rob, who I just tapped on the shoulder and said, Rob, congratulations, you're going to be a training coordinator.
I didn't leave that meeting fast enough.
You didn't, nor did the wife, but here we are. I'm glad we're all here. We've made a long journey. It's been a lot of progressive and good years, and I hope we can continue doing that. I know 2020 has been very challenging. 2021 is still going to be challenging, and we're probably not done with any of this going into the next couple of years, but we're in between our regular meetings. Our normal meeting would have been next Saturday. That's our regularly scheduled monthly, but this is an out of band special breakout. And let's go ahead, Dave, unless you've got any additional announcements, and we'll get into our morning presentation.
All right, maybe some introductions are probably a good place to start here. Steve, would you introduce the folks from Cal ARES?
Yes, of course. Let me make sure I've got, can you see me okay?
Yes, yes.
All right. First of all, my name is Steve Waterman, and I am an old man, co-founder of WinLink radio email system. I retired in 1995, and I'll get into that later. 1999, I'm sorry, but I'll get into that later. What I want to do is introduce John Hudson, who is the named liaison for the Emergency Communication Division, Cal ARES, for volunteer resources. Cal ARES has some new people, and those new people are more aggressively concerned with and seeking volunteer resources for their future plans. The other person I'd like to introduce, John Hudson, I guess most of you know, is the division or regional, your region in San Diego area, chief for ESF2 function and other functions. However, he's been with Cal ARES since I was born, and he has a lot of political sense when it comes to staying alive on his feet and getting the job done. Jim Price, I don't have any excuse for. He's up in the northern part of California, Sacramento area. Jim Price has done a wonderful job of integrating volunteer resources with Cal ARES, ECD. He's survived several different generations of change up there and continues to perform, bring in valuable resources to Cal ARES at a low to no cost basis. Jim Price, I'm going to talk about the Department of Homeland Security's CISA Shares program, and Jim Price has been responsible for acquainting Cal ARES with and bringing in people to provide systems for the shares process. Let's see, is there, I don't know anybody else that's here, I don't think, to introduce other than Dave, Dave Kallenborn, who I met with one of our board members while I was staying in Rancho Santa Fe, visiting and I went to supposedly the world's largest, it was big, I don't know if it's the world's largest air show, and Dave had his crew there overseeing the contingency backup function for the event. And I met Dave there and have had several conversations with him since. I see his face on Zoom here and there. And I'm privileged that you invited me and feel grateful that you invited me to speak. Let me share the screen. And you want me to just move on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Steve, before you go, can I say something?
Sure, you can.
Yeah, so just so some of you know, we've invited Cal OES, we've invited some of our folks aboard. John Shepard, he's out of the Bishop area. He is one of our net control operators for the CESN net that meets on Monday nights and on Wednesdays. He also is one of our HF relay stations. So we have John's on board. You'll see a name, Ashley Lyons. Ashley Lyons is a coworker of mine. She's what we call, if you're familiar with the OES mutual aid regions, as an example, I have mutual aid region 6, which includes San Diego. Ashley has region 5, which is basically the south inland area of California. So she butts up against region 6, and she's one of our newest coordinators, but very sharp. And then as Steve was talking about Jim Price, Jim Price being our digital guy with Cal OES, dealing with shares, and our ALE, if you're familiar with HF ALE, Jim has done that for us. So top-notch reserves. Some of you may not be aware, with Cal OES, we refer to our Oxcom folks as our reserves, and they do many things. And I can always talk about that someday if you ever want to know. So anyways, that's it. And for those of you who don't know me, I am a local San Diegan, born and raised. I live here. I have, if you look in your repeater directory, you'll find WA6HYQ is my call sign. And you'll find some of my repeaters that I have locally. And additionally, I'm also the vice president of the San Diego Repeater Association, Sandra. So that's who I am. All right. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I can figure this out. Okay. I see John Hudson. I don't see me. I don't know how to get me on here, but I don't guess it matters. All right. For everyone concerned, I appreciate being here. This is going to be a fairly wordy, busy slide presentation. Reason is I'll be happy to send it out and let it stand on its own without any presentation whatsoever. So I had to put a few more words in here than good housekeeping would suggest. The presentation shouldn't take too long. If it does, just wake me up and I'll stop. I've cut a lot of slides out of this because I think this group is pretty savvy and doesn't need a lot of material. Suffice it to say that I'm talking about voluntary resources. I'm not talking about ARES, CAP, Red Cross, what people call RACES, ACS, COMU, or anything else. I'm talking about voluntary resources. And let's just leave it at that. It's all inclusive. Oxcom, the government looks at Oxcom as being all inclusive. So let's call voluntary resources HAMs. Okay, so I've been a ham since 1955. Operated CW mostly until 1986. In 1986, at the Dayton Hamvention, I met a man named Vic Poor. Found out he was co-author of the single chip microprocessor. Went to hear him talk about AppLink, which is the predecessor, the DOS predecessor to WinLink and got hooked. And I've been involved with digital data transfer and emergency communications ever since. Currently, I serve on the board of the Amateur Radio Safety Foundation, which is a 501c3 organization that funds WinLink. I'm the WinLink administrator for our development team. I'm the CISA Shares WinLink admin and chair of the WinLink and RMS SysOps working groups. I'm a member of FEMA Region 4, 5, and 10 Regional Emergency Communication Working Group, OXCOM Working Group, and chair the FEMA Region 4 OXCOM Working Group. I'm a TEMA COMU, Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, and serve on the Williamson County, Tennessee EMA Reserves. That's about me. As we all know, relying on normal public safety communication systems that require a local infrastructure can really lead to many issues in certain situations, especially for data transfer of complex messages. And that's a given. We don't know what we're going to be faced with in the future. We had probabilities, but who in the world would have known that the entire world was going to be confronted with a virus that's done what it's done to our population and our lives? So from the local level all the way through to the global level, we've got to be prepared. And that's a tall order. So how do you coordinate any large system, any large network on which normal communications depend? You're talking about power grid, internet, landline, cell phone, satellite, land, mobile radio. They all depend on vulnerable infrastructure, which depends on power, water, and fuel and people. So how do you deal with something that disturbs that environment? The first statement of Part 97, Amateur Regulations, states that the basis and purpose of amateur radio is and this was done prior to NIMS, prior to CONORAD, prior to our civil defense, national civil defense, basis and purpose, recognition and enhancement of the value of amateur service to the public as a volunteer non-commercial communication service, particularly with respect to providing emergency communications. That's the first statement in Part 97 of our FCC rules as amateurs. The FCC says MCOM is critically important as a justification for our existence. The ARRL found that out last year when they did their ex parte meetings with the FCC. The FCC has no qualms about letting us know that that's about what we have left. We're certainly not contributing that much to the radio art. So that's about it. But it's a double-edged sword because we are severely regulated in our Part 97, mainly due to historical lobbying efforts by this and that corporation or agency, most of which don't exist any longer. We have extremely limited harmonically related spectrum for the most part. We have absolutely no channelization. Good luck on providing emergency services on HF during field day or any DX contest. We have severe data transfer restrictions. We cannot enjoy the government's own protocols because we're hampered by a rule that was provided that has nothing to do with our current data protocols. We have no specific MCOM training requiring Part 9 in Part 97. There's no mention of NIMS ICS. They talk about civil defense. They talk about RESources, pre-NIMS language. So the FCC states that we're a public service, not an emergency service. So does that diminish our value? A recent example, the FCC formally adopts proposals to remove the 3 gigahertz band that some of us enjoy. Should we feel threatened by that? I mean, the notice for proposal for rulemaking comes out in 2019, called the Mobile Now Act, provided by the, approved by the 115th Congress, to make new spectrum available for mobile and fixed wireless broadband use. Year later, bingo, it's done deal. We're out there in. A while back, I was looking around, reading, and noticed in the IEEE Spectrum that an article had been written in 2018 about spread spectrum being used for trading on Wall Street on high frequency. And I read the article and I thought, I wonder if they made any progress. So I found David Snyder, who in Florida, who had written this article, and asked him what progress has he did, or why hadn't he written any follow-up? And he said, they won't tell me anymore. They're busy working on this and I can't get any more information. It's hush hush. Should we feel threatened? I mean, this previous administration we were in, the whole game is money. They gutted the FCC to provide, to get rid of net neutrality, and it's still lacking a lot of capability. So should we feel threatened at all? Bill Cross, FCC Amateur Division, retired in 2015, April. He's never been replaced. He got married, retired, nobody replaced him. A year ago, last January, Scott Stone retired, who was in charge of all the amateur division. And they've had 3 people take his place, all attorneys since then. Nobody really pays any attention to or cares about what we think. At least that's what it appears. So requests to the FCC from various sources on all sides of any pertinent amateur issue seem to remain in limbo. But look, 99% of us don't bother to get involved. We don't put comments in. We don't get on and apply for formal comments. We don't make formal comments. We don't read about really what's taking place. It's always depending on someone else to take care of this. We all care, but we don't participate. And I've got a sneaking suspicion it might have something to do with our overall average age. I mean, at my age, 10 years from now, what will be so, so what? I'm not going to fight for it that hard. I won't be doing it. I'll leave it to the next guy, as may the directors of our American Radio Relay League and others. So let me give one example of the type of thing I'm talking about, just to give you an idea. A long time ago, back when AT&T High Seas and others were in competition with what we do, they put forth a ruling out of a lobbying effort stating that no amateur station shall transmit communications on a regular basis, whatever that may mean, to which could reasonably be furnished by alternatively through other radio services. Other radio services. That means a lot more now than it did in the day. There were no cell phones. There was no family radio. So there was no CB band. There was no MERS. There was nothing. There was us and the commercial. And this could be applied today because it's still there. Look up Part 97-113 and take a look at that. Now, do they have the time to deal with it today? Does it really hold water today? If they want it to, it can, because it's there. It depends on the pressure that the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau sees at the time. So recently we know that last month, I believe it was, the FCC Wireless Telecommunications Bureau made a statement, and they paraphrased what I read earlier in Part 97.1, which is why I read it. And they stated that while the value of our amateur radio service to the public as a volunteer non-commercial communication service particularly with respect to providing emergency communication, is one of the underlying principles of amateur service. The amateur service is not an emergency radio service. So HAM's interested in MCOM. How do we optimize our value to our communities? What's the best way to do that? We can't walk up and tell them that we have a spectrum that's going to provide them what they need. So how do we make a significant impact, not only to secure our survival, but to really do an optimal job of providing volunteer services to our community? And I want to tell you about an option that our own government has provided us, not for our benefit, but the benefit of our civil authorities and their critical infrastructure partners. And that is the Shared Resources High Frequency Radio Program, which Cal OAS is diving into, along with the rest of the West Coast and the rest of the country, for that matter. I'd say the amount of devastation that a state takes on each year is the amount of time they spent dealing with this subject. Under formal national communication system, which no longer exists, SHARES was a Cold War warning system for federal government only. SHARES is now under the new Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, which just, by the way, as you know, the top dog got fired. They've moved away from becoming a part of the central DHS core. Now they have their own autonomy, and so they have a lot less politics to deal with. But they are the nation's risk advisor. They work every day with partners to defend against today's threats, and they do a great job. I get the information from them periodically and on a continual basis. And I mean, they are dead on. They don't care what's on the news. It seems like they go right to the heart of the situation and get right down to basics. And that's important. So now under CISA, SHARES is an all-hazard contingency communications option for all levels of civil authority and their non-government organizational critical infrastructure partners. The opportunity for SHARES for civil authorities and their NGO critical infrastructure partners is negligible cost to no cost, proven options, knowledge. It does attract, I guess, the cream of the crop of the volunteer resources, HAMs, and is under their control as agencies. No ECs, no SECs, no section managers. They operate under what's called the Emergency Services Coordinator concept, which it means that no matter who you work for, whether you're professional or volunteer, when you enter an incident or their EOC, you're under their control. You report to them. You can represent your organization, your company, but you report to them. And that really keeps the command and control in the proper context. So what are the opportunities for the amateur radio volunteer? You guys are interested in MCOM, you're in ARES. What's the opportunity for you? What governments are going to provide you an opportunity? How do you approach these opportunities? What are your benefits that you're going to derive out of doing this? And what are the benefits to the community? And how do you get started in all this? So SHARES is not amateur radio. Plain and simple. SHARES is a service for civil authorities at all levels of government, authorities having jurisdiction, in other words, and their critical infrastructure partners, hospitals, Red Cross, Southern Baptist Disaster Relief, Salvation Army, etc. Member agencies are strongly encouraged to use amateur radio volunteers. Most SHARES on the air activities are originating from volunteer resources. Most of the installations, implementations, and operations are volunteer resources, HAMs. The ESF2 professionals are usually not savvy on HF. We have an exception with us here with John Hudson, but he's an exception, not the rule. So those people really don't have time to spare, even if they do know all about this subject. HF communication expertise and knowledge of NIMS brings amateur radio to the table. So it's really all about building relationships with those authorities having jurisdiction and their NGO partners. It's all about people, helping people. Let me make a statement here. The Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Infrastructure Security Agency, this is the hierarchy. They want to be known as CISA shares, not CISA ERONCC shares, but they want it to be known as CISA shares, which brings the level up quite a bit in terms of being recognized as a valuable resource. Shares has nothing to do with the FCC. It utilizes federal frequencies, and it gives an opportunity for those authorities having jurisdiction on local, state, level to get away from FCC type acceptance rules and move into an area that they don't have to be accountable for the FCC. Hello?
Steve, wouldn't it be better to just say the shares frequencies are NTIA channels?
Yeah, but it's more than frequencies, John. It's got a lot more to do with other things than just frequencies, but I'll get into that. So the shares resources don't deal with the FCC. The FCC is a member of shares and has quite a few locations. The purpose of shares is to support the interoperable emergency communications by radio for national security and emergency preparedness. Its mission is to support the mission of its member agencies. So unlike other organizations that you may be thinking about, it really doesn't have a mission. Its mission is there to support the mission of its member agency during any type of emergency situation. There are approximately 3,000 participants in shares. There are multiple agencies that share resources. As an example, frequency. Shares has 145 HF channels. However, other government agencies provide 218 more HF channels. Shares WinLink, for example, which is a Department of Homeland Security run system, has 85 specific dedicated HF channels and 2 VHF channels, with hopefully more VHF channels pending. California has taken advantage of that in Marin County and in Orange County, I think in LA County, and more on the VHS side using Vera FM, which integrates into the shares channels. They're right above 2 meters, right below 2 meters of amateur frequency. So again, type accepted equipment is not needed. The shares has what I call proven components: single sideband voice, WinLink radio email on exclusive federal channels. It also has ALE, which voice, which Jim Price is involved in quite a bit, and several agencies, including I think, LA Sheriff's Department and others. I don't know. You'd have to speak to him at some time about that. There's HF Alert. There's LF alerting, beaconing, that is growing rapidly, as is the Shares ALE network. All of this is driven by agencies, as I said, but actually, more honestly, run by volunteers under agency control. So SHares is a true emergency service that promotes volunteer participation. There's no FCC Part 90 acceptance hardware restrictions for agencies because there's no FCC. So hams can use opened up AM equipment, which is much less expensive, more flexible, and they already know how to use it. They don't have to hire programmers to program their radio. They don't have to worry about unions programming radios. They don't have to spend thousands of dollars on equipment because it's quote type accepted. That makes a big difference when you approach an agency in California that may not have the money that it once did. Right, John?
Oh no, we're rich, baby. We're rich. We're good.
Requires no communication infrastructure that's external. And cost, as I said, are minimal. It's also, because it's open architecture, it's interoperable among civil agencies or NGO partners. AT&T's got 58 locations on this network. When they deploy down into Hurricane Alley and over in the North Carolina area, they bring WinLink with them. That's probably the first thing that they have available along with others. And it's always shares. They all bring it with them. It doesn't last long. They don't use it long because they bring in sows, cows, other portable land mobile radio equipment, but that's where it starts. So it's interoperable, and that's very key. I can't see the top of my slide here. Okay, interoperability. All right, so to complete interoperability, stations participating shares may communicate with civil authorities at all levels of government on their frequencies, federal, state, and local, critical infrastructure, that is via the NIFOG, if you're familiar with that. I'm sure you are. Critical infrastructure providers, including telecommunications, power, common carriers, hospitals, medevac coordinators, transportation, and all others. National and regional disaster relief organizations, such as Southern Baptist Disaster Relief, Salvation Army, Red Cross, other organizations that are not authorities having any jurisdiction, state and national guards. Here's a picture of the Tennessee Emergency Management, the Tennessee Public Health, Tennessee Department of Health shares network. Most of this is WinLink, but it also is applicable to voice services. So that's just that's the Department of Health. Here's Tennessee National Guard. When this was made in 2016, this map, they had 16 drop kits that were on shares channels. Today, they have 33, and they use it, and they exercise it. And anybody that has any influence with their National Guard that would like to speak to the J6 and our National Guard, he's happy to, and has before and will again, provide any information needed for those that may want to get involved in this. I find in some areas of the country that emergency communications is a concept, and in other areas of the country, it's experiential. As you know, there's a big difference between reading the menu and eating the meal. So in this part of the country, I think that with your recent fire hazards and the threat of your being shaken to death, I think that you guys are on the experiential side of this, if I'm not mistaken. It also allows shares to participate in the 5 secondary 5 megahertz channels that amateur radio operators can use to speak to federal agencies. It is Jim Price through Cal OES has a monthly WinLink check-in over HF radio, hopefully, and or VHF, and that is both amateur radio and shares. So I can send a message to K8 KBC over shares as long as I use a shares call sign and I'm on shares frequency. And because it's going to the internet and becomes third party and comes back out to Dave, N8KBC, he can pick it up on the amateur radio frequencies and reply as long as he is abiding by Part 97 rules and using his ham call sign. So there's tremendous interoperability between shares and amateur radio. John Hudson asked for an STA during the wildfires to allow amateur radio to use Pactor 4, which is not legal, to get a suspension of that symbol rate rule, because he was concerned that if they did need WinLink, that they would run out of shares capability and need to move over into amateur radio. And anybody that's operated WinLink knows it's not convenient to take a Pactor 4 modem and limit it to Pactor 3 and then jump back to Pactor 4 and then jump back to Pactor 3. It's just not practical. So there is quite a bit of interaction between amateur radio and shares, even on the air. The integrated public alert warning system called FEMA IPAWS. You get these Amber alerts and what have you. We're in the process now of developing a system for WinLink. We've already had an exercise, very successful after action report. This next week, I have another meeting with FEMA IPAWS and the FEMA RECWIC organization and several others to discuss moving forward with that, where there's total devastation, no other way to receive information, and an alert needs to be sent. WinLink would carry it. And I can give you many instances where that would be applicable, but we all have imaginations. Non-US stations for disaster response coordination, our military and our Department of Homeland Security are out in the Pacific and other places, always doing what they can to assist, and communication via shares is critical in that area. In fact, I just lost 2 of 4. I just lost some of my major antennas in Hawaii to that, for that purpose. The military took it and took it away from me. But what we gained were interoperability among different islands for the Hawaii EMA. And so there's always good that comes out of this. How do you become a shares member? If you're an agency, you register the station and you register responsible personnel. That is a point of entity to sign off as non-disclosure, and a point of contact at where the station is located. So shares can help obtain call signs for agencies. Licenses are, station call signs are station call signs. They're not like ham radio where each operator has a call sign. So a call sign is designated by a location and by type, not by the individual operator. Shares can hand an agency 15 or 16 call signs, and that agency, if it wishes, can provide those call signs to its volunteers to use and to implement operations. But they're station licenses, they don't belong to the individuals. Agencies should participate, keep their equipment ready and operators trained. Again, great opportunity for hams. Most of the people that are ESF2 professionals have no idea how to maintain HF radio, especially if they're not hams, and because mainly they don't have time. Their time should be spent doing things that hams can't do. They coordinate and manage volunteers. The agency that you deal with is responsible for what you do, not the ARRL, not your EC, not shares, but the agency. The funding is great. I mean, if you think about an entire amateur radio drop kit that has everything in it but the kitchen sink, and maybe you could include a inexpensive public safety radio if you're in a county or a local area, is cost less than one single Motorola P25 handheld. And most agencies have a myriad of those as cash to take out and hand out during emergencies. So what a policeman or a sheriff has on his side as a handheld costs much more than usually much more than what it would cost to provide a share station. The NTIA encourages the use of volunteers, encourages the use of volunteer equipment, and knows that many hams already have that type of equipment that they're familiar with and that they would like to use. So it's a real bargain for the agency. So what about the volunteer? Volunteers are managed by their member agencies. Volunteers may be used to operate share stations, freeing agency staff, as I said, to do the work that can't be done by volunteers. Volunteers can do a lot of things. They can keep the cash radio batteries up. They can program the cash radios. They can do a lot of things. They can keep the portable equipment and trailers up to date. They can handle the ALE function on HF, like Jim Price does, and for Cal OAS. There's a lot of things that can be done by volunteers to free up agencies and free up employees in agencies so that people like John Hudson can go home early. A license is not required. You don't need to be a ham. You don't need a GROL licensing. It's up to the member agency to determine whether you're qualified or not to use their share station call sign. So no operator licenses, only station licenses. And there's an advantage to that. And I may say this at another place in this presentation, but if you're in a hospital and you have a critical need and you know, and you've been trained how to pick up a radio and push a button, you don't have to wait for an amateur radio operator to get there before you start passing your traffic. Agencies usually require NIMS training, online and classroom, or today, online and virtual classroom. It's very important that we understand the National Incident Management System. It's one of the few processes that is common among all levels of agencies and one of the few places where I see them getting along well, frankly. Okay, so do we get any support? I mean, the ARRL supports us with the FCC. The ARRL does what it can, but it's a 501c3 organization and a publishing company. So how else can we get support from our federal government? Back in 2017, during the horrific hurricane season of that year, mainly Maria in Puerto Rico, but also many other hurricane instances during that year, amateur radio played a pretty extensive role. The ARRL sent down 22 people to Puerto Rico. Share sent down 10 hams to support the joint field offices in Puerto Rico. There was quite a bit of activity along the coast. And the FCC put out a questionnaire that is not the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, but the Department of Public Safety, Bureau of Public Safety and Homeland Security, put out 2 questions and a public comment to those agencies that were involved. Question number 1, to what extent were response efforts facilitated by amateur radio operators. And the summary answer, and I'd be happy if you want me to provide this information. I've got a copy of the comments that came back from DHS, all of them, but this is just the summary comment from DHS. The answer to question number 1 was, in addition to the direct services provided by amateur radio operators, the indirect service of technology development, operator training, and support of the SHares WinLink network, among others, make amateur radio an indispensable component of our national capability to prepare for, protect against, and respond to, recover from, and mitigate all hazards. Now, that's a pretty powerful statement coming from the Department of Homeland Security directed to the FCC. And they're sending a message, a very powerful message, but not as powerful as the answer to their second question, which was, going forward, should efforts be made to increase the use of amateur radio services in connection with planning, testing, and provision of emergency response and recovery communication? And the answer that the Department of Homeland Security gave surprised me, but I was very happy to see it. DHS said, we asked the commission to review those aspects of Part 97 of their rules relating to emergency communications, including operational and technical restrictions, which limit utilization of new technologies. What else could we ask for? So let me give a summary of the shared services, because I don't want to put you to sleep here. If you're awake still. Schedule weekly single sideband voice and digital nets occur. ALE voice, which Jim Price can talk about offline. There are networks every Wednesday up and down your area and nationally. There's the Central United States Earthquake Consortium net of 8 states that deal with the New Madrid Fault. And there's talk about starting one on the West Coast as well. Better to have a system up and running and a network available before you have an emergency, rather than trying to be stressed out and find somebody at the time of an emergency. So there's planning taking place there. The Department of Homeland Security WinLink Hybrid Radio email network is very robust and dwarfs anything that is available on amateur radio. The HF alerting and LF alerting, there are beacons that are available over radio that volunteer resources mainly and some agencies are dealing with, and it's pretty robust and it works. It's growing very rapidly. Collaboration with other working groups by webinar. We have what's called the Interoperability Working Group, which any SHares member can participate in and join and listen to. They're tremendous for ascertaining what's taking place now with new technology, with real emergency services, with some of our federal agencies and how they respond, to some of our state governments and how they respond. Some of our local communities and infrastructure partners and how they respond to emergencies. They're wonderful presentations monthly. There's also combined program groups of the above working groups that take place. I'm on one of those committees, the WinLink Working Group. There's an RMS SysOps working group for WinLink. There are over 100 people involved with that, because there's 100 RMSs. So let me just give an example here, because I'm more familiar with it, of the SHares WinLink system. It is a true hybrid network. So DHS normal WinLink, which is a bridge from an end user to a radio message server over HF radio to the internet email system, from in a disaster zone to outside of a disaster zone, hosts over 95 radio message server gateways that receive traffic from end users. and it's growing rapidly. Friday, we just brought on National Geospace Intelligence Agency, 2 locations coming up, one in Virginia, one in St. Louis, and on and on. The standard WinLink bridging to the internet with RF, which is normal WinLink. And then because it's a cybersecurity protectorate, and because it's their network, we were mandated to provide what's called radio only. And that is, we have what's you might call a giant mesh network that does not recognize the internet or use the internet in any way. It hops from RMS to RMS over HF radio to provide, we provide heuristics that measure propagation and other characteristics using heuristics that route traffic throughout the nation from, as I say, from radio station to radio station. If I want to send a message to the Oahu EMA, I could put it in TEMA EMA, which is 6 or 7 miles from here, where there's a state EOC has a share station. I could put it in there and it would route itself through these heuristics where it needs to, depending on time of day, propagation conditions, etc., to the destination station. Each RMS scans 5 frequencies every 16 seconds, and it covers the United States. So each station has a capability, all the frequencies each station uses, most of them are unique, so that in any one disaster area, the optimal number of RMSs are available so that traffic can be optimized in and out of an area. These stations are up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They get bugged to death if the station goes down. It's an automatic system that bangs their cell phone and rings their telephone at 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever. But remember, we're talking about non-amateur radio here. So if a state watch gets banged at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's okay. There's somebody there being paid to do it. Mostly volunteer resources, HAMs provide no-cost maintenance for agencies with the WinLink system. I'd say that 85 to 90% of the hardened sites in OECs and other places are manned by amateur radio operators. A heck of a contribution. These are available to shares members and their designated volunteers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. In other words, all year long, you have the privilege of using this system. We want to keep it busy. We don't want to keep it too busy. It's an emergency system. But when it comes to RF, it's an open spectrum, and the more noise we make, the less other third-party, third country use can be found on those frequencies. Here's a picture of the shares radio email radio message server stations. As you see, they all are hybrid. And if you notice, there's one red station there, meaning that that station has been knocked off the air. And the reason why it's been knocked off the air is because I took that during Hurricane Hannah, which is, you can see right over Brownsville, which is where that RMS was located. But those people have the capability of going to a lot of different places to get in and out of that area while they repair their communication infrastructure, which is the purpose of this network. So what's the time? Okay, don't have a lot of time, so let me just go really quickly here. I've been, at the end of some of these sessions, people say, well, HF is right now is in the worst place it could possibly be. I mean, on the 11-year cycle, we're down at the bottom of the tank. Conditions are horrible. I couldn't even get on my 75-meter nightly net and hear a soul. Things are terrible. The sky is falling. And so what I did was, I knew this was upcoming. And so what I did was, and you can find this anywhere. If you go to the WinLink website, go to tools and look at propagation, you can see there's a slider over different lengths of time, all communications over WinLink. Can't see what they say, but you can see where they've transmitted. So here I am in Nashville, Tennessee. If you see that long green mark, and I transmitted at 9:30 at night, 2 megahertz past ahead of the theoretical maximum usable frequency. From here to Oahu, Hawaii, I passed the message using my little 30-foot high, 130-foot long in-fed antenna with a counterpoise and my 100 watts to Hawaii. No problem. Came in here like gangbusters. Something that won't happen on the ham bands, and here's why. This is what was on the other end. A quad Rosetta antenna, which is essentially a vertical log periodic in an X shape with 4 separate legs, each leg 300 feet long from the center, 140 feet high, all on a 9-acre plot to keep the noise away on the highest hill in Oahu in Hawaii. Formerly owned by the Navy. They were going to tear it down and put it into a parking lot. We had a hero that was worked in the Pacific Rim for the Navy, was a ham, and knew this was going to happen. Talked to the DHF. DHS has negotiated, and now that antenna is a DHS antenna. So I just gave up that antenna in order to have RMSs that are going to be interoperable between each island rather than try to push long haul. This is the configuration of the antenna in the upper left. This is the solar powered station where it resides. Of course, that's the inside over on the right. Now I bring that up because as hams, we all have to consider that we're in the worst part of an AHF cycle, and we have nothing but roses to look forward to. HF mobile antenna and radio, $1,400. Factor 4 modem, $1,400. Ability to send email or commercial communication system fail, priceless. And that ends my presentation. I hope it's prove valuable. Frankly, I did not, how do I get out of this, Dave?
The top of the screen should be
Stop share.
there you go.
Okay. I purposely did not, can you see me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I purposely did not put anything in there about what to do when you're operating with an agency. The fact that we're in a functional role, not in an operational role, the fact that we don't command in anybody, the fact that we should dress professionally and not wear our badges, our hats, our suspenders with our microphones hanging off of them, because I think you guys already have that down, because I know the guy you're working with, and I saw it with my own eyes. So I at the expense of having to listen to me further and at the expense of the clock, I left, and because I know it wasn't necessary, I left you guys out. I want to know, though, are there any questions?
All right, to do questions here, since we have 40-some people on here, go down to the reactions button on the bottom. There's a place to raise your hand. That'll make it a little more orderly. And we have one from Gary, LKP.
You're not, you're mute.
You're muted, Gary.
Unmute your microphone.
Dave, while Gary's working on that, maybe you could mention the question and answer that went through chat while Steve was talking.
That's
What
where I was
what
going.
that?
There was somebody who had asked, let me bring it
About
back
frequency.
up here, what frequencies for the
Okay.
shares Wednesday nets. And
The frequencies for shares are not available to anybody but a shares member for obvious reasons. It is a part of the Department of Homeland Security. Messages, any message that goes out over WinLink, regardless of mode, is available to the public. We cannot obscure data. Shares, that's not the case. Shares, if you're an agency, or you're a hospital, or you're a shelter and you want to send a personal HIPAA information, or you want to send a body count, or you want to send inoculation inventory, or you want to know where to pick up a delivery for oxycodone, you don't want that on a public network. Agencies in a lot of states, that's illegal for you, for a land mobile radio system to be open to the public. So another advantage of the share system is that it is not available to the public, including frequencies. Gary, can you, you got that worked out? Nope, Gary's still, why don't you put it in the chat, Gary?
yeah, you're still muted, Gary.
If you have a regular Windows PC, all you have to do is push and hold your space bar on your computer. That should do it for you.
It's not working, Gary.
Did you push the space bar on the PC?
He did. He came off of mute, but we're not hearing the audio.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
sorry
righty.
about that, Gary. Type it, senor, type it.
Yeah, somebody brought up something else here. They use MT63 quite a bit. The volunteers do to broadcast point to multi-point messaging during the net, during the voice nets. In some areas of the country, they don't do it at all. In other areas of the country, they do it quite extensively. They also use, for example, we have a symbol rate rule that the FCC for 6 years, when Bill Cross left, he approved it. It was going to happen. And then he left and some things happened. There were some foundations that promoted some university funding, foundations in universities, New York University specifically, by huge common carriers that were opposed to lifting the symbol rate, mainly because they have what's called STNAG protocol modems. STNAG is an open protocol, but the driver and the hardware is not. And they charge a tremendous amount of money for, you can buy a modem, and then you have to buy the ARQ portion, and then you pay a little bit more for the Huffman encoding, and you pay a little bit more for this and that. And they've got a corner on the market, and they don't want that opened up so that a ham can put it on a sound card. All right. So there's a lot of politics involved with the symbol rate rule. You can tell them that it's twice the speed and less bandwidth and more efficient, and they spend less time on the air. They don't care. That isn't their message. So that's why we need the ARRL, but more importantly, that's why we need people like DHS and FEMA as well in our favor. And it's happening mostly because of the product that I'm talking about, the shares resource. Any other question?
So far, nobody's got any hands up.
So I want to make one statement here. None of this happens, as Dave well knows, unless you are sponsored by an agency. An agency can be a hospital, An agency can be Southern Baptist Disaster Relief, the Red Cross. An agency can also be your county EMA or sheriff's office, or whoever it is that handles emergency communication for your county and for your state. The latter has a tremendous advantage because it is an authority that has jurisdiction, which is a major deal. And the whole business here is building relationships. You can have the best trailer, you can have the best drop kit, you can have all kinds of NIMS qualifications, you can be a COML certified, you can be a COMT, you can have the OXCOM course down and be certified by it, but it doesn't matter if you don't get called, and you won't get called unless you're from the agency's familiar with you, trust you, understand your capability, and need you. And you've got to let them know that you're needed. You're needed.
Right, right. Okay, we do have another question from Joe Saraki. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, Steve, great presentation. About a year ago, I heard that Shares was looking for, or you could as a single station, in other words, your home station, you could get it licensed on the Shares frequency. Is
Okay.
that still available?
Yeah, yes and no. If you are in Mars, when the change was made, the negotiation was no more federal only, that this was going to be a service for contingency communications for all levels of government and their critical infrastructure partners, including anybody at Mars that signs a non-disclosure can become a shares member. Anybody that the Coast Guard Auxiliary allows can become a shares member. Anybody CAP allows can become a shares member. Can a ham off the street become a shares member? Under one circumstance, and that is he provides a 24-hour day, 7-day a week, 365 days a year radio message server for the Shares Radio email system under the guidelines and qualifications provided for that service. That's called an NCC, or National Coordinating Center for Communications Auxiliary, or DHS Auxiliary Station, and that is permissible. Other than that, you want to work through your agency. Think about it. What are you going to do as an individual when an incident occurs and you're not invited? So nowadays, the days of individual ham heroes are really over. Everything is coordinated and predetermined, depending on it only shrinks and grows by size of incident. Anything, any other, yes, you can get a copy of the presentation.
Yeah, Steve, if you'd send me a copy of the slides, I can post those as well as the video on
I'm going to send
our
you a copy
Google.
of the slides that are hidden also.
Okay.
Hidden because not because they're secret, just to save time.
Okay.
I can't help my draw. I apologize. I know it slows things down, but that's just the way it is. The message that I could leave you with is that the government, another arm of CISA, or Department of Homeland Security, called the Emergency Communications Division, formerly called the Office of Emergency Communications, is responsible for the implementation of a lot of the advanced courses like COMT, COML, and what have you, FEMA courses, including the OXCOM course. OXCOM certification is as real as a communication leader certification. It is an official certification that's recognized by the government up and down the chain. And OXCOM includes the ARRL. It includes individual amateurs. It includes everybody. It's all inclusive, but it is run from the Emergency Communications Division of the Department of Homeland Security. And I would highly recommend that you take a look at that. Cal OAS is very serious about it. There's not much they can do about it now because they're just now coming up with experimental virtual courses. You can't attend the classroom course anymore. Maybe that'll end pretty soon. Most of us are over 65. Maybe it'll end next month. I don't know. But the point is that that is something that we should pay great attention to. I think that you'll find with the absence of ARRL Connect and Paul Gilbert, you're going to find that you may become more familiar with that as time moves forward. And you may not. Depends on whether they've learned a lesson. Jim Price, you raised your hand, sir.
I did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that we're concerned about at the state of California is communications with people that can give us information from our counties and other field agencies. And that's the kind of information we need. So a person just operating a radio from their garage doesn't do us any good. So we want our members or people that we deal with, both on the voice side and on the WinLink side, to have emergency communications and a relationship with their respective agencies, whether it be a county or Red Cross or US Coast Guard. We've just added a bunch of Coast Guard auxiliary people into our voice net. And one of the requirements is that they needed to have emergency communications with their respective Coast Guard organizations. We just can't use a person in a garage. Doesn't do us a bit of good. John, you may have something else on that.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit just about how in California we manage the Oxcom program, and also how volunteers, we call them reserves, relate to us, and how we look at what's called the continuity of government to coordinate this resource. An example is, I think everybody on here, except for just those that are coming in from Cal OES, are local San Diegans. So in San Diego, if you want to participate in emergency communications, you would relate to either an NGO such as Red Cross, Salvation Army, Southern Baptist Disaster Relief, etc. There are several out there, but also you would become what's called a disaster service worker, registered through one of the municipalities, such as the city of San Diego, the county of San Diego, etc. And I know Steve Roush is on here. He's the radio officer for San Diego County RESources. I'm not sure, Steve, did you guys change your name, or you still maintain the term RESources as your organization?
No, we're now referred to as the Auxiliary Communications Service, but we serve as the RESources function for San Diego County.
Can I ask a question here? And right off the bat, has RESources ever been officially deployed by an authority having jurisdiction?
Of course.
Where?
Well,
under Part 97 400XX.
Well, okay, what we were talking about was what we called those organizations. Years ago, it was State of California RESources. Well, we changed that to ACS, Auxiliary Communication Service, which is what, yeah. Okay, so
different.
Okay. And I wanted to say, you were talking earlier about people, and I know I'm going down a rabbit trail here, because there's so much information to this. And I know, Steve, you're in Nashville. You and I have had these conversations for years. But in California, we have a very structured system in how we manage this resource, because it falls under the State of California's Emergency Services Act. It falls under the state mutual aid system. In the Emergency Services Act, there's a section about volunteers. And under that section, 8115, it talks about how you have volunteer firemen, volunteer police officers, law enforcement, and you have a volunteer communication service. And under volunteer communications, that is where the radio amateur or the OXCOM program resides. But I want to talk a little bit because you mentioned something about people volunteering and what have you. Yeah, those of you who've been around San Diego may remember the 2003 and 2007 fires, where there was a moment where first of all, we in 2003 we burned out half of the infrastructure in East County, San Diego. I mean, there was no cell, there was no telephone, there was no internet, nothing of it. Total blackout of communications except for amateur radio. And Cal OES, in response to that, put satellite trailers and communication units all throughout the back county, providing the ability for folks to come in and file their FEMA forms on the internet, because we provided that through satellite and other things. And what happened was we burned through all of our communication reserves in San Diego County. The RESources guys were burned out. Cal OES folks were burned out. And so what happened was we put a request out in the amateur radio community for assistance. And what happened was we started getting, first of all, we went out through the mutual aid system and we tried to tap all those programs that had volunteers that were signed up as disaster service workers. And when you talk about disaster service worker, when you're activated, you're now covered by the with insurance. So if you get injured or something, you'll have assistance there. What happened though, we burned through those guys because it was, we're talking 3 months operation. So we actually went out and we had people, what we call Convergent Volunteers, which are folks who are not signed up, not sworn in, and taken the oath. So they came and I had to register them on site. And so we did that. We had people coming in from Arizona and across the Western United States. And so under an event like that, Steve, is what you talk about. That's the scorched earth kind of thing, and that is an extreme situation. But mostly in California, day to day, we want people to be registered and trained and actively involved in their communication programs. So first of all, you're all background checked to make sure we don't have any felons or sexual deviants among us. Also, because you may be in an EOC where there's sensitive information. Can't have people in there that.
You're muted, John.
You hit the mute button.
Okay, there we go. It's like the Lions Peak repeater. I timed it out.
But back up about half an hour. No.
No. What I was trying to say was, we want folks to ahead of time, all right, affiliate with either an NGO or a government organization. But understand NGOs, I don't think they can do background checks. So that limits access into like EOCs and things. But if you're affiliated to an organization such as the City of San Diego, I'll just use Chula Vista, La Mesa, whatever, County of San Diego, like Steve was talking about the San Diego County ACS, your background check, you're registered as a disaster service worker. That makes you accessible in the California mutual aid system. We even had, and I'm having a senior moment here, but there have been times such as Hurricane Katrina, where we sent resources from California to Louisiana. And it would not be uncommon for us to send someone who is SHares trained in WinLink to an event like that. I know
Exactly.
I went to Puerto Rico. I mean, they went to Puerto Rico.
Exactly.
And yeah, so, but if you're already ahead of time registered, you have your training, and you're already coming with a capability because of your personal involvement in radio, what have you, you're a valuable resource. Valuable.
I want to say that John took me to meet the former Don Root, the former DSF2 for San Diego County. I think it was a department, Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
Sheriff's Department. And I know it was near Scale Matrix, where we have our standby common message server. At any rate, I sat and I listened to Don Root, who was very enthusiastic about this. Of course, he was getting ready to build a Motorola trunking system for the county, which is no small task. And he was involved in politics up, and his wife had passed away, I think, there when the next year and what have you. But there's a new guy there now, and I have no idea who he is. John May. I have no idea whether he's been tainted by problems with amateur radio operators, or whether he loves them, whether he's a ham, whether he isn't, whether his staff has talked about it, whether they haven't. But there's no way to find out unless we ask. And that would be where I would start. I would start with John, make him introduce you to this guy. I don't know whether he knows him or not, but make John do it anyway. Call him at 2 in the morning and ask him if he's thought about it yet. whatever it takes. But
I would say if you're interested in San Diego County ACS, talk to Steve Roush. He's on here. Steve can provide you his contact information and help anyone that's interested in that. And I want to say something, Steve Waterman. I think you said something about amateur radio and dwindling and old man stuff. And while it's true that those of us who've been licensed a long time and have a background in this and the experience, in MCOM ham radio, I recently heard a statistic that we have more licensed radio amateurs today than we've ever had. But where are they? Where are they?
We just live longer. That's why.
Yeah, right. They're in the CERT programs, and that is a resource that I believe government has not truly tapped or understood. And I think that many organizations such as Sandra and you name your ham clubs have not. You remember years ago when we got licensed, we had an Elmering program. We had some old guy that put his arm around us and walked us through all this technical stuff and building antennas and what is HF radio and yada yada yada. What is RTTY, right? I go back to the San Diego Teleprinters Association where we had a teletype repeater on OTI. Anyways, point being,
those people are called now Oxcom instructors.
Yeah, that's right. Oxcom. Hold on, I gotta kiss the wife goodbye. She's going.
All right, Jim Price had a question here in the meantime. Jim, you got your hand up?
Yes, I did. I was just going to add a little bit to when we were talking about some of the training and the certification. And we tell our people that are on our nets to please make sure that they have a good relationship with the agency that they're representing, that they're working with. I can give a quick example of a Coast Guard, what they call a COOP, a continuity of operations exercise that they were doing up in Portland when I lived up there. And they were trying to set up HF and VHF antennas, and the Coast Guard people didn't know how to do that because they haven't done that kind of thing for years. And the auxiliary was trying to help them, and they wouldn't let the auxiliary in to help them because of security issues and because the auxiliary had not been working with them. So it's important when there's an emergency and people come into an emergency operations center from maybe another department or whatever, they may not know who you are, and they may not even let you into an EOC. So it's important that we continue to exercise, to drill, and to work with our agencies so they know, number one, who we are, And number two, what we can do for them, because we have to constantly tell them what we can do for them so they won't forget us.
It's all about relationships.
That's the whole key to the whole thing.
People work with people they know, and people work with people they know.
But I think Jim made a statement a moment ago that's real important. If you've related to your government organization or your NGO, if you've been through the government program, they've background checked you and what have you, you wind up with a ID card. So if I have done that. I mean, we've had incidents where I've had to reach out and pull in resources from another area. And when I say resources, I'm talking about radio amateur or radio personnel to help augment what we're doing. Now, I have all the equipment. I got handhelds. I mean, Steve talked about that. Anyways, point being, I needed technical type folks that understood communications. And so through the mutual aid system, I pulled them in. They had an ID card. I knew if they held a card from San Diego County RESources, I knew that individual was good to go from the standpoint of not some felon or what have you, but also has had some level of training. And that's important. If I have someone show up that doesn't have an ID card, maybe no one even really knows who they are because they haven't really related to the local ham organization or ARES folks, that's a problem because I don't know what their background is. I mean, I just don't know. I'll tell a quick.
That's all of that's critical because in order to get that, you have to have a relationship. Those people have to trust you. They have to know what your capabilities are. They have to know what you can and can't do. They have to know what you're willing to do. I mean, nobody wants to go into a cold warehouse. I'm sorry, into a warehouse with moderate temperatures and sit there and charge up Motorola cache batteries on handhelds for 2.5, 3 hours, put them back in the radios, put them back in the suitcases, put them back in the trailers, and then go home by themselves. Nobody wants to do that, but if it's part of the job, it's part of the job. And then when the real thing comes along, that individual knows that he can depend on you as a volunteer resource. It's just that simple.
Well, there's a problem with ad hoc volunteers. During Hurricane Katrina afterwards, I was down there and they had people coming down, college kids coming down saying, we want to help. And they'd say, oh, okay, fine. Do you have a hard hat? Well, no, I thought you would supply that. Or do you have steel-toed shoes? No.
How about a place to stay and food?
And so that kind of a volunteer isn't really much help. They don't really understand what's going to be required. And so that's a matter of training and relationship.
All right, we have John here has a question. John, go ahead. Has his hand up. John Shepard.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I spent some time when we were having HamFest. One of the forums I almost always went to was how to engage younger people in ham radio. I think I'm older than John. I don't have an age. I have a potassium-argon ratio. And one of the things that almost always comes up is that in many cases, younger people really were or are interested in public service. And they get sort of engaged in the ARRL stuff. They look at what hams are actually doing, and they don't see much substance. I think what we're talking about is the ability to add substance to our efforts in emergency communications. And I think there would be, that would be something that we could put forward, even though it's not ham radio. I understand that. But that's a gateway to some potentially substantial contributions that under people, under younger people could make. So I think there's a relationship there that could help us overall.
Yeah, there's in the WinLink system, the people that are interested in, that are young that are interested in the WinLink system are interested in the fact that RMS Relay can serve as multiple servers in a mesh system. So we have a huge mesh system that covers 2 counties here in the capital city of Nashville and the county of Williamson. And it is with this recent episode we had with the RV bomb, it came to fruition. What we do came to fruition. It was a hard lesson for some people to learn, but it worked out for us. And all the way from North Carolina, all through the Southeast, AT&T long lines permeates throughout a lot of other services, including their own FirstNet, etc. So there were a lot of lessons learned, and usually I go out and sell what I do, but for the since that's happened, I've been taking orders, and the people that I've been dealing with are younger and are interested in how to supplement TCP/IP, the internet, whether it's radio or any other methodology. And younger people are interested in that type of things, as far as I can see. Very few want to do CW. Very few want to work on a MarsNet. Very few are interested in that type of thing. But the technology is there. DMR is another thing that I've noticed that young people are attracted to. Even though it's amateur radio, FEMA Region 4 is connecting all its state EOCs via DMR. So
Steve,
that we have a talk group.
Steve, in San Diego, they have a very robust ARDN system. Is there anybody in the ARES group that does ARDN in San Diego that maybe can talk about some of that? Because it is tremendous. It covers not only San Diego County, I believe they have it going in Imperial. I know they have some in Orange County. And so they've spread out over Southern California, this mesh network, if you will, using ARDN. And then they've tied radio repeater systems through that.
The individual that you're talking about in Orange County just contacted me asking about shares and VHF. And I don't have my email. I don't remember who it was, but I notice all over California, ARDN is very, very big. And that is a natural flow into WinLink. It's just like another protocol to enter WinLink.
Isn't Mike Burton involved with that, John?
He is. He is.
Yeah, Mike's involved more with the WinLink. There isn't really a lot of ARDN still going on down here. That's a lot of that has been pulled back and is not very active anymore. I think we're sort of getting off topic here, and I think Grace has her hand up. So Grace.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to ask Steve, I have 2 things. Was it Don Hill who contacted you about ARDN in Orange County? Because he's pretty much in charge of ARDN out here.
Who?
His name is Don Hill.
I have no idea. Let me, do you have another question? And I'll look while I'm trying to find that.
No, sir, I have to leave, and I just want to thank everyone for allowing the Laguna Woods Amateur Radio Club to participate in your meeting. Very informative. I have a lot of questions, so I'm going to contact you later, maybe through email. But thank you all so very much for allowing us to participate in this. I appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Grace, before you go, let me just say that I'm not sure where you're located, but Cal OES has a robust radio amateur, I shouldn't say that, has a robust reserve communication unit. You don't have to be a ham, but we're always looking for good people. And if you're interested in that, I would say reach out to me. My call sign is WA6HYQ. We have, if you're not familiar with the state mutual aid system, regions 1 and 6 of Southern California, we have a great group of folks. We have about 20 people, but we're always looking for more qualified folks. So I'm not sure where you're at, Grace, but if you're interested, reach out.
Thank you very much. Yes, Laguna Woods, Orange County. So that's where we are. And John, can you give me some contact information?
Yeah, my email is my name, john.hudson@caloes.ca.gov. And
Grace. Oh,
if
go
you were to
ahead.
come and become part of our organization, you would be part of the group out of Los Alamitos Joint Forces Training Center. We have monthly meetings, and we actually invite visitors. In fact, if someone says, "Hey, John, I want to be a part of Cal OES, the CRU," I actually ask them, please participate as a visitor for a few meetings, just to get a feel for who we are, what we do, just to, to make sure it's a good fit. I mean, it's something that you would be have a passion to want to be involved.
Grace, I think this man's name was Steve Pierce, and the Laguna Woods Ham Club, W6LY. Am I in the right place?
Yes, sir. That's it. That was Steve is the one who contacted me, and he is familiar with Arden, but he is not, I don't think he's involved with the actual Arden program, but Don Hill is also in our club, and he takes care of California, Arizona, I think all of California and Arizona. So he's pretty much in charge of it. And he is one of our technical committee members with the club. So again, yes, Steve was the gentleman who got me involved, got our club involved in this. Thank you.
Sure. He's W6LY was applying for an HF RMS, and I haven't talked to him, but I want to talk to him about the possibility of moving that organization through an agency to the SHares network rather than amateur radio, so that they can pass traffic from agency to agency. But I haven't, I don't know where that communication is now, because I just found the original email here. I put orange in my in my search and found it. Laguna Woods Ham Club, W6LY, would like to set up an HF WinLink station.
Yeah,
Laguna Woods Amateur Radio Club is the name, W6LY, yes.
Right.
Yeah, Steve had classes this morning, so he couldn't be here. But are there any additional questions? If not, we can wrap this thing up, and before we get too far off of our original topics here. I don't see any more hands up. Thanks, everybody. Steve?
That wasn't me.
It. Go ahead.
Somebody else was trying to talk there.
Yeah, WA6DNT here. I'm with Red Cross DST, and we've not been able to get into our building for months because of the COVID thing. It's shut down, so we can't check into the SharesNet. We have a license for it, but we have not been able to get active. I was wondering if there's a way that I could represent Red Cross, since I'm a Red Cross member, to check in from my home station. I have radios that could work those frequencies, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, you have what's called a transportable star call sign intentionally. If you remember, we talked about that, which allows you temporary deployment anywhere, including your home. So you know what your call sign is, and you can represent the Red Cross from your whoever signed the point of entity. If they give you permission and you're the point of contact, certainly you can operate using that call sign anywhere you want to operate from your home. You can check into the Shares net, or you can do whatever you need to do. You have that freedom. It's up to the point of entity, whoever signed that.
Yeah, we're doing that right now from our state operations center. We're operating from home as well.
Yeah, that's the name of the day. I check in on on our state P25 Motorola network twice a day during COVID, and I don't think anybody's at the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency because they're scared to go.
Yeah, I don't blame them. All right, if we don't have any additional questions, I think some of these are questions that need to be answered one-on-one. We'll get this recording done and get it posted, and I will get copies up to Laguna so they can go through this. And if Steve will send me the slides, we'll send that along with it and go from there and move forward.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope nobody fell asleep. If anyone has any more of an interest in this and needs more information, please contact me. Contact Jim Price. If you want more information, contact John Hudson if you want more information. I think that John's a regional individual, and his employer is very interested in this. He's not a ham, and his employer, who's the deputy statewide interoperability coordinator for this function that we're discussing, is extremely interested in every county having this particular function. So you got the state behind you for whatever that's worth, and maybe they can help you with your own counties. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Steve, and John, and Jim. Thank you for being here and adding to the conversation this morning. Thank you very much, and we will go ahead and end this and move on for next week. Thank you, everybody.